A couple of months ago, I talked about what my personal Pokémon team would be if I lived in the Pokémon universe. And because I enjoy talking about Pokémon that I like, and apparently you guys seem to as well, I want to talk about some of my favourite Pokémon from the 7th generation in the form of another team video, this time going through what my team will most likely look like through my first playthrough of Pokémon Sun and Moon. Or should I say Sun, since that's the version I'll be playing first. Now before I start talking about any Pokémon, I will warn you, I am going to be talking about a couple of Pokémon that were data mined, and some of the stats, moves and abilities of some Pokémon. So if you don't want to find out any stats, abilities and moves, and any data mined Pokémon, you can leave if you want. But if you're fine with knowing, then let's get into my team for Pokémon Sun and Moon. So at the beginning of every new generation of main series games, you the player are given the choice of grass, fire or water. And as I've explained in an entire video before, we all have our own reasons for which starter we choose. Now there is a small amount of people who will ditch their starter during their playthrough, but luckily I'm not one of them. My starter is always with me, and a lot of the time, my favourite Pokemon of the generation will be a starter. And if you've been following this channel for a while, or even my Twitter, or just seen the thumbnail of the video, you'll know that from day one, Litten has been my favourite of the three. So much so that Litten is overall my favourite first stage starter. The only way I wasn't picking Litten was dependent on the final evolutions of the starters. Now I will say this might be my new favourite starter trio. I think all of them are great, but my favourite overall is still Incineroar. Not gonna lie, I really love Decidueye, but I do still slightly prefer Incineroar. I love his look, I love the typing, I think he has some of the best in-game animations, his signature move is awesome, his Z move is awesome, and overall, the Litten line is still my favourite of the Gen 7 Pokemon we've had so far. The only two things about Incineroar I'm not really a fan about is its shiny form, which I think works amazingly well on Litten, but not really Incineroar, and the fact that it's slower than Emboar. Like, 60 base speed is just really bad. But of course I don't pick Pokemon for my team based on how competitively good they are, just on how much I like them in general. Plus Incineroar getting access to both Fake Out and Intimidate as an hidden ability means that it could do really well in doubles. So, Litten will be my starter, making Incineroar the first Pokemon on my team. Now when picking my in-game team, after picking my starter, the next two Pokemon I decide on will have the types of the starters that I didn't pick. In this case, I have my fire type, so next I look for which water and grass type I want for my team. First, the water type. Now for a while, Washi Washi did stand out the most. I liked its unique schooling ability, and apart from the water starter, my water options weren't the best. That is until I saw Wimpod's evolution. Golisopod. The idea of such a wimpy Pokemon evolving to an absolute beast I really liked. Although if you think about it, Golisopod is also kind of a wimp, since its ability Emergency Exit basically works the same as Wimpod's ability Wimp Out. The user switches out if its health goes below half. Kind of a sucky ability, and it will make Wimpod even harder to train and evolve, but to obtain a Pokemon as badass looking as Golisopod will be well worth it. Hopefully. Also its name, Golisopod. It's a pretty awesome sounding name. Moving on to the grass type, funnily enough, I was at one point going to trade over a Rowlet so I could have a Decidueye in my team, but since I am getting both Sun and Moon, I decided I'd start with Rowlet in the Moon version. That way I'll be able to have a completely different team for both versions. So the grass type that I've decided on is Morlul's evolution, Shiinotic. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's what I'm going to call it from now on. So from the new grass types to choose from, I was going to pick Serena because I liked its stat distribution, I liked its Queenly Majesty ability where it's immune to priority attacks, and its signature move Trop Kick. But I realised at one point that my entire team was basically full of physical attackers, and while Shiinotic's stats aren't quite as high overall, it does have the additional fairy type which I liked, and it gets Spore, which is always a plus. On top of that it also gets Dream Eater, so basically keep this thing well away from Salandit, and any other poison types, as well as fire, flying, ice and steel types, since Shiinotic is very slow, just like most Pokemon in Alola. Put them to sleep with Spore, and pretty much do whatever you want. Heal with Dream Eater, attack with Moonblast, heal again with Giga Drain. It looks like a very annoying Pokemon to deal with. It also looks kind of zombie-like, for a fairy anyway. But overall I do look forward to using it on my Alola team. So now that I've decided on the fire, water and grass type of the team, the next type I usually look into is electric. When Tapu Koko was first revealed, I instantly loved its design, and I still do. It's still my favourite of the Tapus by far, but it is looking like it's possibly not obtainable during the main story of the game, and being what seems like a legendary Pokemon, so I decided to go with something different. The other electric type that caught my eyes was Alolan Raichu, as I really love the idea of it surfing on its tail, but I figured, you know what, I'm not really going to focus mainly on Pokemon types, and just use Pokemon that I personally want to use. So the next Pokemon I'm picking for my team is the very popular Lycanroc, midday form. Honestly, I really like both Lycanroc forms about the same amount, but the version I will be playing will be Sun version. In terms of stats, the midday form is faster, while the midnight form is slightly bulkier, but my team is lacking speed already, so the midday form fits better anyway. It also gets a priority rock move, being Excel Rock, which is awesome, although I do feel like the midnight form should have got its own unique move instead of counter. Still, I love Lycanroc's design, or designs, and the midday form does look like a ton of fun to use. The next Pokemon for my team is actually a Pokemon I was kind of disappointed in when I first saw it, and that is the pseudo-legendary of the game, Komodo. Seeing the art for this Pokemon first, I wasn't really a big fan of it. I guess it just looked a bit too scaly for my taste. Luckily, like a lot of Pokemon, they instantly look much better when you see them in-game, and that was definitely the case for Komodo. It's also the first dragon fighting type, which is overall a pretty awesome type combination, despite being completely destroyed by fairies. And it also has an awesome signature move, Clanging Scales. A special dragon move with base 110 power, 100% accurate, and the only drawback being a decrease in defense. Now that is a great move, especially during the main story. And the cherry on top of Komodo being a pseudo-legendary is going to have some very nice stats. The biggest letdown about Komodo for me is that its fighting move pool for a fighting type Pokemon is a big letdown. The only attacking fighting moves it gets are Sky Uppercut, which has a chance to miss, Brick Break, which is lacking in power, Focus Blast, which has an even higher chance to miss, and Counter, which is a move I don't really want to use. Like, is that it? No close combat? No Drain Punch? I mean, if you're going to make the first fighting dragon, can you at least give it some good fighting coverage? Well, despite that, Komodo still looks like an absolute beast, and will hopefully play out like an absolute beast during the game as well. And the 6th Pokemon I've chosen for my Sun and Moon team is, in my opinion, one of the best new design Pokemon, and definitely one of my favourites from the 7th generation, and that is Silvally. Now, Type Null does kind of look like a Pokemon that's possibly not catchable in the wild, and is either available during after the main story, or very difficult to obtain. But either way, I'm still going to try my best to get one on my team. This Pokemon line just seems like one of the most interesting and fascinating to me. I think Type Null's design is so unique, and I love it even more when it evolves. Plus, Silvally is basically a weaker version of Arceus, although I think I prefer Silvally's design more. Now, funnily enough, I did think I wasn't going to have an electric type on my team, but now if I wanted, because of Silvally's very cleverly named Arceus system ability, which changes Silvally's types depending on the item it's holding, I can have one. And because Silvally's signature move Multi-Attack is whatever type Silvally is, and its stats are 95 across the board, Silvally can pretty much fill any role you need on a team, which will hopefully make it one of the funnest Pokemon to use through a playthrough. So with all that said, Silvally is my final team member for my Pokemon Sun and Moon team. And with all that said, this is most likely what my team will look like for my first playthrough of Pokemon Sun and Moon. Of course, this team is subject to change, but this is definitely the team that I will be going for the first time I play the game. A like on the video would be very much appreciated if you enjoyed. And before you go, I'd like to thank Loot Crate for sponsoring this video. If you're an anime fan, then you're most likely going to like what Loot Anime has to offer. For less than $25 a month, they'll send you really cool anime based items, from clothes, to mugs, to collectibles of all sorts, and everything you receive will always be worth more than what you're paying for. This month's theme was delicious, so I received some really cool food based stuff, featuring items from popular franchises like Naruto, Food Wars, and more. Next month's theme is Blade, and I hear that they have items from Berserk, Sword Art Online, and Bleach. So if you're interested in getting some really cool stuff for each month, you can sign up using the link in the description, lootcrate.com/TheAura. And the best part is you'll save 10% by using the code TheAura. You have until the 27th, 9 PM Pacific time, to subscribe for the next Loot Anime, and if you do choose to sign up, do remember to use the code TheAura. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you check them out. Anyway, that's going to be all from me for now. I have a very special video planned for when Sun and Moon release, and by release I mean when I get my copy of the game, so look forward to that. Like I said, a like would be very much appreciated, subscribe for more Pokemon videos in the future, and until Sun and Moon officially releases I guess, thank you so much for watching.